Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, former mayor of a California beach town and best-selling author, Debbie Peterson. And I don't see her yet, so she must be late. So just hang in there. She'll show up. We're also coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks, on 26 global audio and video platforms like iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo. I mean, just a whole bunch more. In fact, we are proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands, and #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. Born in Liverpool, England, Richard Allen lost his dad to cancer in November 2020. He turned to writing about loss and grief and has written 5 books, 3 #1 bestsellers. But before we get started, I do want to take this moment and thank my last week's guest, Eric Hart, author of On My Way Back to You, One Couple's Journey Through Catastrophic Illness and Healing and Hope, with a foreword by Kathy Lee Gifford. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews, including this one, on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of the other 26 global audio-video networks that I mentioned earlier. All right, enough of that. Richard, so great to have you on the Caregiver Dave Show.
Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, I always like to ask my guests, who is Richard Allen and why was he placed on this earth?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think to help other people and to continue what my mum and my dad, well, my mum certainly, obviously my dad has passed, but my mum continues to do. I was brought up in a loving home, and we were always brought up, myself and my sister, to help other people. So that's why I'm here, I believe, to help other people. Yeah.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. And we are having our co-host join us, Debbie Peterson. Now, you were nearly a priest. I don't know what that means, but you went to seminary, you came back, it wasn't for you. You want to explain that part of your life? Hi, Debbie.
Yeah. Hi there. Apologies for the delay.
No problem.
Hey, Debbie. So this was back when I was in high school. I went to an all-boys school in Liverpool, and my teachers were priests. So it was a very Catholic upbringing. I was at Mass every day. Long story short, really, I was about 15 years old, and I just had this longing to become a priest. I guess it's hard to explain other than that's just how I felt at the time. So I sat down with my mum and my dad, and they were very shocked and surprised and concerned.
Sir?
And then I went off with the school to a seminary school in a small town called Shrigley. And I was there and with a number of other boys from my school, and I quickly realized it was just not for me. I can't really put a finger on it. It's just a feeling that you have, right? I guess you could say I didn't have the calling. So I came back and I told my parents, I'm not going to become a priest. And they were quite relieved. I don't know why, but whatever. So at one point, I was an altar boy for many years at my local church between the age of, say, 11 and 14. And like I say, my school, I had priests teaching me. It was an all-boys school. I went to Mass every weekend. We had Mass at school every day. So it was always in my life. So maybe just being surrounded by religious upbringing, it was just part of the way I was living at the time. Yeah.
I too was in Catholic school for 12 years, right across the street from Catholic Church. I'm aware of that. In New York, I think we were taught by Jesuit priests,
Okay.
Anyway, using nature, Nature has become a huge comfort to you during your grieving process? As we're talking
Yeah.
about your dad, you were his caregiver for how long?
Well, my dad was diagnosed with cancer in February 2020, and unfortunately, that was during the pandemic. So I couldn't get over to England, which I'm sure thousands, if not millions, of people can relate to, because it was a difficult time to travel, wasn't it, during the pandemic, and certainly to get out of the country. So I was constantly talking to my dad, whether it be through text, email, phone calls. Very upsetting. I couldn't be there. So my mum and my sister were were with my dad, through this time when he was going through the cancer treatment. But the doctors had basically said, there's nothing we can do for you. He is going to pass. So he went on radiation and the chemo first. But it was just horrible. When I did get over there, Dave, it was, it was actually, well, I went over there early March. My dad told me in February 2020 he had cancer. We went straight over there, really the start of the pandemic. And we spent a week with my dad, very emotional, very traumatic. And then me and my wife came back to America. And that was really when the lockdowns kind of happened, when there was the travel bans. And my dad kept telling me, don't come back into the country, it's too difficult, and so on. And then when my sister sent me a text in November 19th, she said, it's time, you need to come over now. I don't know how it happened, but my wife found me a flight, and I got on the first flight over there, and the plane was empty. The airports were deserted. I landed in Manchester, England. I got on a train. It was empty. It was like it was in a Hollywood movie, to be honest. It was like there was nobody in England. It was just totally desolate. I mean, there was just nobody around. But anyway, I got to my mum and dad's house. For all this time, while I was traveling, I honestly felt I was going to get there too late. My dad would pass. But I ran up the stairs in the house, and sure enough, he's lying in bed and he's watching a Clint Eastwood movie. And I was like, wow, I was totally shocked, Dave. He looked fantastic. And I was like, I had this thought that he's going to be okay. I don't know what, he's going to be here for Christmas. This was in November. But then 2 days later, he passed. He just deteriorated so fast. And the nurses told me that's typically what happens when somebody is about to pass. They call it a rebound effect. It's a rebound, and the body kind of just pushes with all this energy and essence of life to give this last kick before they actually let go and give in to
waiting
death.
To say goodbye to someone.
Yeah, it was really weird. And but yeah, he passed in 2 days. So I was there Saturday morning, and then Monday evening I was holding his hand while he took his last breath, which was crazy. I mean, I remember talking to my wife saying he's going to be okay, and then calling my wife Monday and saying my dad's just gone. I mean, it's just bizarre.
What made you write these books? Am I to assume that because I've read a little about what you've said and written, that you are having messages from him, or you're feeling
yes,
he's communicating with you?
Yeah, so I've never written a book in my life. My English is terrible, but thank goodness we have editors.
Hey, you have the Queen's English.
The Queen's,
Our
I
English
know.
is terrible.
Well, you might think
that's
so.
if you use it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I lived in Britain for 20 years.
Well, there you go. So Debbie. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now it's the King's English, I guess, right?
I like the Queen.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for the Queen. Yeah, she was lovely. But my wife, Alison, she told me after my dad's passing, why don't you write a book, Rich? Which was a shock to me. She said I'm a good communicator, but anyway, I thought, well, I don't know. So I started doodling and making notes on my desk, and before I knew it, I had 9 chapters written, and that was my first book, Keep Calm and Cope with Grief. And it did go to #1 on Amazon, only for 1 day, but it was there. And as you know, sales go up and down so fast. But that book, I think, can help in so many ways, because it's kind of the way I wrote it was about what I was going through, but also, of course, I did a lot of research. But it was about my travel to England, what I experienced losing my dad, how I felt. It also talks about how to plan a funeral. I mean, this is the first time in my life I'd lost anybody close to me. I had no clue. And my mum, of course, was devastated. My sister too. So, we all chipped in and we all pulled together. But we had to figure out, how do you organize the funeral? How do you write the eulogy, the obituary? How do you deal with the will? And then my mum was in no state to deal with the finances of the house. There was 27 different accounts that I had to deal with, whether it was car insurance, home insurance, my dad's mobile phone, the water, the gas, the electric, my dad's passport, driver's license. The list just went on and on. My dad's pension. And I was contacting all of these companies trying to organize it. So when I left to come back home to America, my mum was left with everything in order. And I got back from England only a few days ago, actually. My wife and I went over there to see my mum, and she thanked me again. She said, Richard, I don't know how I could be here without you, because everything is going through fine. All my bills are being paid. Your dad's pension comes into my account. I literally have nothing to worry about, and it's all thanks to you. And that still touches me. It's like, well, that's what we do for our parents, right? They looked after us. Now we look after them. But this is all on my book, because people don't realize that when you lose a loved one, there are so many things that you have to deal with.
First book.
Yeah.
How to get through the grief, how to do the funeral stuff.
It can prepare you for what's to come, but if you're going through it now, it can help you now, Yeah.
Dave mentioned that you've written 5 books, and presumably you've written all these books since your dad died?
Yes, yeah.
Wow. So how do they work? Do they work together? Are they a series, or how does that work for people?
I think they do. I mean, I don't know how other authors operate, to be honest, whether they just keep writing books. But for me personally, Debbie, I wait till I feel a book is coming out of me, like I'm ready. So these books are a journey that I'm going through. And quite frankly, I think it's what most of us go through. So my first book, as we mentioned, Keep Calm and Cope with Grief, it was boom, I've lost my dad. What do I do? The funeral, the emotions, all of this. And I do talk about some of the signs from my dad in that book too. Then the next book, and for me in my life, I've just lost my dad. So I was getting these signs from my dad. So my second book, Life After This, I was looking into, where do we go when we die? Where do these signs come from, and how can we communicate with our loved ones? Now, that might sound a bit spooky, but honestly, if people pray, whether you're at home or you're in a church, to me, that's trying to communicate with a loved one. I'm saying a prayer, right, to whether it's my dad or my dog or my grandparents who I lost many years ago. I'm still trying to communicate. So that was my second book, trying to answer those questions or look for answers to those questions. Then my third book, as Dave was talking about, nature. Now, I'm truly blessed where I live, because I live on a lake. So when I look out of the window now, I've got trees. There's a lake at the back there. We have ducks that come into the backyard every day, deer, possum, raccoons, you name it. So I sit outside as often as I can, because to me, that's my church. So this book is all about how nature can help us through the grieving process, how I've found it to be my church. Then after writing 3 books, and of course, people writing to me on Facebook, a lot of people were saying, please write a book for children. So that was my 4th book, which is called Look Up, specifically for children who have lost a loved one. How do they cope? It's only 600 words. It's a picture book. But to me, I love, these are all my favorite books. I wrote them, right? But this one's very special because it's got such a simple message. And actually, adults have spoken to me and said, Rich, it's helping me. And I love that book. And then finally, my latest book, which only came out last month, called Heavenly Realms. And this book, I focused totally on heaven, what many religions refer to as the afterlife, or the place that we go to called heaven. Because again, for my journey, where is my dad? I know he's alive, but just not in this world, because I could tell you stories for hours about the signs I've had from my dad. So I started to research. I spoke to priests, funeral directors, all sorts of people about this place called heaven. I wanted to know what it was, where it was. Is it real? Is it not? How it affects our lives? So many questions I had. And as I say, I put this in this book, Heavenly Realms, which again is one of my favorites. But that's where I'm at today. So my books really follow my own personal journey.
Did you get answers to all your questions?
I did. I still, more than ever, I 100% believe that there's an afterlife. Now, funny enough, while I was in England, I had a discussion with my cousin and his partner, and she didn't agree. She said, "You're born, you die, there's nothing."
Yeah.
You know, so people have that belief, and I
Sorry for those people.
Yeah, yeah, and I respect that. We're all different. We all have different beliefs. But for me personally, I believe that there's absolutely there is an afterlife, and I've experienced not only the signs or seen orbs. I've heard voices. I could go on, but
let's talk about the signs. I'd like to hear what signs you've had with voices and all that stuff.
Okay. So when I was in England in February 2020 or in early March, my wife and I stayed in a hotel close to my parents' house. And one night we were in the hotel. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. There was a man outside playing his guitar. This is in the city, so it's really busy with clubs and bars. He was playing Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. He was doing a really good job. And there was a crowd of people singing along. And of course, I sat there crying. I don't know why now, but that song means a lot to me. Every time I hear the song, I break down. Anyway, you fast forward 2.5, 3 years, right? Because it's coming up to 4 years since my dad passed. So we're back in America. Now, when I go to bed, I always put my cell phone on my nightstand, right, to charge. And so does my wife, and we're asleep. At 1:16, specifically 1:16 a.m., my cell phone goes off, and it's playing Sweet Caroline. Full blast. And it wasn't the start of the song, Dave. It was the chorus. Sweet Caroline. Wah, wah, wah. And I sat up in the bed, absolutely panicking. And I shouted out, Dad, are you here, Dad? And I'm looking around the room, pitch black. And Alison wakes up and she's like, what's going on? I said, I don't know. I look at my cell phone and I pick it up and I couldn't get it to stop. There was no apps open. The song is not on my phone and I couldn't switch it off. I had to physically switch off my cell phone to get it to stop. And we both sat in our bed crying, and I just cannot explain why that song played on my phone. And again, I think I'm a logical person. I look at it and think, well, could it be this? Could it be that? But my dad knows, because it's happened so many times. The day that Alison and I got married, the very day we got married, I took Alison to a beauty salon to get a haircut ready for our wedding. That was in the morning. We're driving back to this tree house we were staying in the mountains here, where we were getting married. And the song came on the radio. I just switched it on. The first song, switch it on, it's playing. Again, coincidence. But my dad, I'm sure, knows that song is special to me. That could be a sign that he's just saying, hey, son, I'm here and I'm with you. But that time when it came on my cell phone at night, I can't understand. And a friend of mine said, Rich, have you looked in the Bible at Romans 1:16? Because it was 1:16 a.m. when the song played. I said, no. So, of course, I get the Bible. I'm looking, Romans 1:16. And if you read it, I've got a Bible over there. But anyway, it basically says, he who believes in me will find salvation. And to me, again, a coincidence, it was 1:16. But could that mean to me anyway, that my dad's telling me he believed, so he's alive. He found salvation because he believed. I mean, I just don't know. I'm more of a believer than a non-believer. So when I see all of these things, I mean, I just can't explain it other than that. It's got to be my dad.
It seems to me like it's an affirmation of your faith as well, not just him saying, I'm alive, but also just hearing your story that you started in the priesthood, you felt called, and then you realized, no, you probably weren't called. And it seems like your dad was coming back too to say, I affirm your faith too.
Mm-hmm. That's true, Debbie. I never thought of it that way, but I can see that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've done research. You've spoken to priests and funeral directors and doctors and vets and anyone who's lost people, maybe in the hospital, nurses, doctors. What is
Yeah.
their reaction to your conversations with them?
Um, I've been very surprised because you would think, certainly with priests, right? I've talked to priests in England, in Liverpool, and I've talked to priests here in North Carolina. Very different outlook on religion, on God, on the Bible. And I guess when you step back from it all, I guess that's the way it's supposed to be, because if you read the Bible, you can interpret it in so many ways. I mean, right now I'm actually going through the Bible again. I'm reading the Old Testament, and I don't mean to sound or to terrify anybody, but or scare anyone. But if you read the Old Testament, it really is terrifying what goes on in there. And to talk to the priests, I mean, for example, one of the priests I talked to in Liverpool said he does not believe in the Adam and Eve theory. He
That's
thinks
odd.
he said, "Look, Rich, the Earth isn't 6,000 years old. There wasn't really an Adam and Eve. I think he explained to me and to my wife Alison, it was taken out of context. He doesn't believe the Bible is being translated the right way in that particular aspect of Adam and Eve. He said, there's dinosaur bones. We know that the planet is 4.5 billion years old, not 6,000. So, and I was actually shocked. I was like, wow, this was fresh coming from a priest. So again, I'm just surprised, Dave, by the variety of responses I get from different people in different professions, which is refreshing, I think. People aren't just, what would be the term, sheep. We're not just all following in one direction. We're actually thinking it through and trying to make sense of what's in front of us as individuals, which I like.
You've mentioned so many times on social media all the responses from people. Maybe the next book could be not just what some of the so-called experts are saying, but what some of the real people are experiencing, people like you who shared their stories. I'd love to read some of those.
Yeah, and being away for 2 weeks in Liverpool and coming back, yesterday was my first day sitting at my desk, and I was catching up on all of the correspondence. And I'm sure you guys go through this too. When you hear other people's stories, you sit here in tears. I mean, we all go through grief and we all go through it differently. But one lady wrote to me, I mean, at Christmas gone, she lost her father, her brother, a dog, and there was another member of the family she lost, all at Christmas. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so much grief, so much pain all at one time. And she actually wrote to me and she said, Richard, why didn't God take me? Why leave me behind? See, I'm getting upset now thinking about it. It's just so painful. But to talk to these people, but we do our best to try and help these people to stay strong and to, I don't know, I just share my opinion and say, keep believing, keep an open mind that one day we will be reunited with them. That's what I believe.
Tell us about your spiritual awakening. I mean, what form did it take? Are you reading the Bible? You obviously have an opinion of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So I
share your faith.
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think Jesus is for real. I think he's our Lord and Savior. Like I said, okay, I can tell you one quick story, and please don't cut me off because you think I'm crazy.
I asked you to share your faith. Everyone
okay. So I truly believe I heard the voice of God. Now, I'm not, that sounds, I always say this. I wouldn't, if somebody said that to me, I'd think, hang on, that guy's crazy. You know what I mean? So
that's your lesson.
Yeah. So what happened was, it was a Sunday, and this was in 2023. This was last June. We were in this house. Alison was upstairs. I was downstairs on the sofa, and we were going to Walmart to do our shopping. And I was waiting for her. And suddenly, I mean, I wasn't down. I wasn't thinking of my dad. Suddenly, I was in this vacuum. Like I couldn't breathe, but I wasn't in pain. And it was deadly silent. It was like my ears were popping, like pressured on an airplane or whatever, right? And it was just like, And I fell on the floor. I was on my hands and knees. I couldn't move, but it's hard to explain. I was like just restricted in some way. And I heard this voice and it just said, everything's going to be okay. And right there, I knew it was God. It was weird. It was so surreal. And then I burst out crying. I mean, it was as though my whole soul just poured out. I was crying. And my wife had just walked into the living room and she thought I was having a heart attack. She goes, Richard. And I went, don't touch me. Don't touch me. And it was without doubt, the strangest moment in my life. And then I gathered myself and I sat up and she said, what happened? And I explained it to her. And I said, I had no words. I said, I feel silly. I feel stupid. I feel embarrassed. I feel like, am I crazy? But I knew what just happened to me. And it was all over in 15 seconds or less. You know, it was very quick, but I just knew. That was on the Sunday. Tuesday, Alison lost her mother. She passed away. Now, she lived in Georgia in a retirement home. So on the Wednesday morning, we drove down to Georgia and they'd moved Doris into the funeral home. So we went straight there on the Wednesday to see Doris laying out, right? And we walked in there, obviously very emotional. We then went into the funeral director's office and we sat down. Very nice man. And we just started talking. And out of nowhere, he tells us this story that he was driving to the mountains one day, to stay at the family cabin in Georgia. And while he was driving up this mountain, he had this sense that his brother was in the passenger seat. And now his brother had committed suicide years ago. But the funeral director was saying that he misses him every day, misses his brother. Mm-hmm. So he started to cry. So he pulled over to the side of the road because he was upset, feeling and knowing his brother was beside him. And the funeral director says to me, his brother told him, everything's going to be okay. Literally that phrase he says to me, and 2 days prior on the Sunday, I heard the same thing. And as he said this story to us and shared it with us, I looked at Alison, she looked at me, and we were like, whoa, what's just happened here? You said it was the voice of God on Sunday talking to you. Everything's going to be okay. 2 days later or 3 days on the Wednesday, we're in a funeral director's office. And he says a story that his brother was sitting on the seat talking to him, saying, everything's going to be okay. The exact same words. So I don't know, Dave and Debbie, you make sense of it. I'm looking for answers. That's what I do. I'm trying to figure it all out, but I believe. I really do.
I believe too.
Yeah.
And I do too.
I will say this, one last thing is my next book. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but you know the way people want proof? Because this is all faith-based. And my book, Heavenly Realms, I touch on this as well. But in the book, I mentioned this. Seeing is believing, right? People want to feel, touch that heaven is real or God is real. So show me, they need proof. That's the feeling I'm getting from a lot of these people I talk to who do not believe. But if you think about it, we have things around us right now that we know exist, but we cannot see. The oxygen we breathe.
Yeah. I
can't see it. I can't touch it, but I know it's real. And what about gravity? We know gravity is real, but I can't see it. I can't touch it, but it's so what's to say that God or heaven isn't real? I can't see it or touch it, but it could, and we know is real. Right? I know it's real.
Well, God's obviously using you to witness to the world that he's alive. And how can people get a hold of your book? Is it on Amazon, wherever books are sold?
Yeah, it is Amazon.com. If you go to my website, which is basically, I use my dad's name as my author name. So my author name is John Allen, but my full name is Richard John Allen. So if you go to richardjohnallen.com, you'll find my books, you'll find more about me, my podcasts. But yeah, the links will be there to go to Amazon. You'll find all my books on Amazon.com. Yeah.
Great. And people can email you if they want.
Yeah. Again, you can contact me through my website at richardjohnallen.com. Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. There's a contact form there. Yeah.
Debbie, how can people get a hold of you and learn more about what you do?
My website is debbiepeterson.com. And I'm also an author. And interestingly enough, I also wrote 5 books in a very short period of time. And they did just kind of flow out naturally. They come when they're ready. And so one of my recent books is City Council 101 for people who want to become more involved in their local government.
But you also have a website that says Mayor Debbie?
I have one that's mayordebbie.com. And I do indeed. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I have a best-selling book too, a few of them, but my latest one, not my latest one, but my one pertaining to caregiving is It's Your Life Too, Thrive and Stay Alive as a Caregiver, available wherever books are sold, and also on my free membership website, caregiverdave.com. You can also schedule a free 30-minute initial coaching call, talk about whatever you're struggling with. And I also invite you to join my Caregiver Dave Facebook community of 34,000 caregivers, lots of tools, resources, videos, this radio show, much, much more. And if you click the like or follow button on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this interview on, it helps us reach even more caregivers by improving Google's search engine algorithms. So Richard, Debbie, thanks so much for joining me today. And thank you, everybody out there, for making us the #1 caregiver podcast on the radio, on the internet. So until next week, same time, same channel, may God richly bless you all. Bye-bye.
One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is about Charlene, a stroke survivor. Back in 1996, Charlene was a healthy, normal, very active 52-year-old woman whose amazing talents resemble that of both a Martha Stewart and a Wonder Woman. But all that changed when she suffered a massive stroke that left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. Who am I? My name is David. I've had the privilege of being Charlene's husband since 1975. We had a wonderful fairy tale, storybook-like courtship that culminated in our marriage a year later. Charlene had just come out of a marriage where after 10 years, she received 2 black eyes and a broken nose by her former husband when he came home high on speed. Charlene believed in no second chances of any kind for abuse, so she left. Finding herself all alone in the world with her 5 and 10-year-old daughters, Cynthia Lorraine and Deborah Lynn, she started raising them by herself for the next 2 years. Then fate brought us all together. After falling in love with Charlene, Cindy, and Debbie, our love then produced Rebecca Elizabeth. We had a wonderful, normal life for the next 20 years. But today, things are very different for everyone. How about the reaction of 9-time Grammy and Dove Award recipient, the godfather of contemporary gospel Christian music, Andre Crouch? Charlene just won't let the promises of God go, and she has not let her circumstances get in the way of her faith. She's not just a survivor, she's more than a conqueror, as the Bible states. You'll be encouraged by her testimony, regardless of what you're going through. Available everywhere.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again.